Welcome back to another episode of the 3&D podcast. We're your hosts, Rashab and Gabe. And this is the first ever 3&D podcast annual award show. So we're going to do the NBA awards. This will be part one of a two-part segment. And on today's segment, we're going to discuss the Sixth Man of the Year award, the Coach of the Year award, and the Defensive Player of the Year award. So it's that time of year. The season's about to wind up. We're literally a week or two away from, I think 2 weeks away from the playoffs. A week or so before the season wraps up. Teams have got anywhere from 5 to 7 games left. So I think it's a good time to start giving out these awards. Some are more clear than others. Some may be decided towards the end, but for the most part, we have a pretty good picture of how these awards are going to play out and what people's applications will say to these awards look like. Gabe, let's start with Sixth Man of the Year. And the way we'll do it is we'll rank our top three candidates for the Sixth Man of the Year award. I have more candidates that I'll give an honorable mention to, but really and truly, we're just going to focus on top three. That's really all that matters. I don't think anyone cares who finishes fourth or fifth. Like, good for you if you finish fourth or fifth. No one cares. So let's go with the top three. Do you want to go? Do you want to give me your top three?
I can just give you my top three. I have a feeling we'll be similar within three, but I can just start like that.
Okay, so why don't you give me your top three? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure thing. In my top three, I have Tyler Harrow, Jordan Clarkson, and Kevin Love, all for Sixth Man of the Year.
Wow, those are my exact same top threes. Okay.
Well, and I don't even think it's really close just based on contribution to the team. I think Tyler Harrow would have to win Sixth Man of the Year, now solely because he is coming off the bench, but he's still putting in about 32 and a half minutes a game, essentially playing starter level minutes. He's had to burden a lot of the Heat load, especially with their in and outs with injuries. Jimmy Butler's missed significant time. Bam Adebayo's been in and out of the lineup, but even Kyle Lowry has been out for significant stretches of the time. So in a sense, Tyler Harrow's also he started several games as a result of that, but truly in the sixth man role, which he'd qualify for, I think he would have to get a lot of the credit for winning this award, mainly because the Heat are a 50-28 team currently. They're first in the Eastern Conference. He's having career highs in points, even like field goals attempted. So like the burden of the load, his contribution to the team is really, amplified from the prior year. And when you go look at the sixth man of the year landscape, you're essentially comparing every team's six best players. So he's really competing with essentially only 29 other players. I don't think anyone really compares to his role. Now, Jordan Clarkson, I think, would be close, but even at the same time, he's only playing 27 minutes a game. He's shooting at less than 42% on the year. And the Jazz haven't had the same success that the Miami Heat have had, albeit the Jazz have been healthy for most of the year. And I guess Kevin Love I'd place at third. You could argue he's second, only because Cleveland, it's a real shock that they're even in a playoff position. And, he's only played 22 minutes a game, but like veteran leadership plays a presence into this, how he's responded. And there's also like maybe a narrative element for him because he was really down. He's preached that he's had a little bit of mental health issues. And like Kevin Love's really rebounded well and having a pretty good season on his own. So, yeah, I think, but it's clear cut. I think it's Tyler Harrow that should win Sixth Man of the Year this year.
Okay, so I have pretty much no disagreements with literally anything you said. So I'll just add to what you said. I have the exact
Sure.
same top three. I have Tyler Hero winning it as a runaway. Like, it's not even close
Yeah,
for
you don't
me
even think it's
second.
close.
It's not even close. And the thing is, Tyler Hero's pretty much playing starter minutes, like you said, but he's just doing it from the bench. They rely on him in the fourth quarter. He's one of their two best offensive creators when the shot clock's running out or when a play breaks down and they need someone to create something out of nothing. It's either him or Jimmy Butler. That's who they go to as their two shot creators. Bam might be their most important player. Kyle Lowry is also very important for them, but it's when it comes to offensive contribution and it comes to offensive shot creation, it's Tyler Hero. Like you said, his field goal attempts are up. The amount that he's handling the ball, the amount that he's relied upon, the minutes that he's playing, what he's doing for a winning team, a team that's near the top of the East, if not in first place. I don't know if they're first, but that top four in the East, so it's
Yep.
changing daily. So, but they're definitely in fighting for first place. So it's really not close. Tyler Hero in a landslide at the top. I had Jordan Clarkson second, just like you. His numbers are a bit better than Kevin Love's. He was the winner last year. going to be a runner-up this year. If it wasn't for Tyler Hero playing starter minutes and Tyler Hero effectively being a starter that's coming off the bench, I would say Jordan Clarkson had a good shot to win it again. Utah's still doing well, but like you said, they're not doing as well as they have been in the past. Miami's doing better than them, and Jordan Clarkson's just not playing as many minutes as someone like Tyler Hero. So Jordan Clarkson's in second place, but a distant second. I think Tyler Hero has really distanced himself from anybody else in the race. And I had Kevin Love third as well for the exact same reasons. Like his leadership, it's kind of been a rejuvenation year for Kevin Love. Like he fell off the last few years with injuries and not being available. I think he had a calf strain that kept him out for most of last season. Like he was kind of off the radar a lot, and now all of a sudden he's had a good year. He's averaging 13 and 7, good percentages. He's providing veteran leadership to a team that desperately needs it. And you touched on it. You said Cleveland's poised to make the playoffs this year. This is, if I understood it correctly when I was doing my research, I think this is the first year since Cleveland's drafted LeBron that they're going to make the playoffs without LeBron.
Correct.
So that
And
is
it's
very,
not even close. Like
yeah.
all
They
the
haven't
other
even been
years they weren't
close.
even close. Yeah.
They weren't even close. They were pretty much at the top of the lottery the other years. Like they had a bunch of number one picks. We know that with Kyrie and Anthony Bennett, Andrew Wiggins. Like they were really, really struggling, and this is the first year where they've been able to put together a meaningful season. So I think they need some representation in some of these awards for the end of the year, and for that reason, I had Kevin Love third. So we have the exact same list. We have the exact same outcome. Tyler Hero runs away with it. I want to give a shout out, honorable mention to Cam Johnson on Phoenix and Kelly Oubre from Charlotte. They're both playing well. They're doing their job. But again, these three guys are above them, and Tyler Hero's so far ahead that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's almost not even fair because, like you said, he's basically playing as a
He's a
starter. He's
starter.
just effectively coming off the bench. So I think there needs
Yeah,
to be a little bit of a rejig to the rule because he's clearly not the sixth best player on this team or the sixth option at all. It's just
he's not. It just
when he
works
comes
out.
in.
Yeah, it just works out better for Miami to bring him off the bench. But really and truly, he's a starter level player in this league. I think he's proven that this year.
Yep.
He had a down year his second year. He had a good rookie year, but yeah, he's effectively a starter coming off the bench, kind of like Manu Ginobili was way back when in his San Antonio days. But yeah, Tyler Hero in a runaway. Let's move on from that because I feel like that was probably the easiest one we're gonna have today.
Yeah, I just want to add one last thing.
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
I think he's going to win in a guaranteed sense only because Jordan Clarkson won it last year. So I don't think he's going to win it twice in a year, even though it's just slight voter fatigue. And for Kevin Love, even the story you kind of pitched there, it seems like he'd be eligible for more comeback player of the year, maybe not necessarily sixth man. But I think this is the space that Tyler Harrow is qualified for and clearly occupies, and that's why he's got the best shot there.
Yeah, agreed. If the NBA had a comeback player of the year type award, yeah, I would have Kevin Love near the top for sure. He's had a great year. Okay, let's do coach of the year next because this is interesting. There's a lot of good teams this year. Like we've seen just up and down the NBA, this year has been a really fun year as a fan because you've had a lot of teams have a lot of success. Like I think in the East, I think the 10th or 11th place team in the East is still above 500, which is crazy. Like that's a lot of success to have in any one year. And we just talked about it like 2 minutes ago. In the East, we don't even have seeding established yet. Nobody's locked up first place, and that's going to go all the way through to the end of the season. We're really not going to know until right before the season's done. So it's a very fun year as a fan, but it leaves open a lot of coaches who could have potentially won this award. But let's go with your top three. Who's your top three?
So in my top three, I have Taylor Jenkins, Eric Spoelstra, and Monty Williams for Coach of the Year.
Oh, interesting. Okay, we have a very similar top three. I
Okay,
have
what's your three?
I have Taylor Jenkins,
Yep,
Ime Udoka,
yep.
and Monty Williams.
Okay.
So we
So
defer on Spolstra and Udoka, but anyways, you go for it. Give your reasoning why for your top three, and then I'll say mine.
yeah. Oh, do you want me to tell you who I think flat out wins?
Sure. Who's your
Okay,
winner?
I think Monty Williams should win Coach of the Year this year.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. He pretty much got robbed of it last year, but even if you look at the records across the NBA, Memphis has the second best record in the league, and Phoenix is still 7.5 games ahead of them, on pace to win about, I think, 66 games. And usually, whenever a team is in that realm, that is the coach of the year on that team, especially when they necessarily don't have anybody in, let's say, top five MVP voting. So they don't have a superstar that's in the MVP race. Like, it has to come down to great team play and great coaching. And I think what Monty Williams has done there, like that whole team's changed from the last couple of years, and they've really bought into what he's preaching. And I think, you know what, the record shows it. They are head and shoulders above these teams in the regular season. So I think he deserves to win Coach of the Year. In second, I would have Taylor Jenkins. Now, I think there's a good chance he actually wins. And I think the case of John Morant being out and their team being extremely successful without him kind of puts him more so in the spotlight, as he's like the coach of the team that's playing without the superstar. So I do think that's actually helped his case a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if he won. I actually think he probably is going to win the way people speak of the Grizzlies, but I think Monty Williams deserves to win Coach of the Year this year. And Eric Spoelstra, solely because of the Miami Heat, they've been among one of the more injured teams in the year, and they're first in the Eastern Conference. Now, I know the record isn't too flashy, but I do think there's something weird, I guess, going on in the Eastern Conference with the records. Like, nobody's wanted to pull away. Sort of like if you're running, like, let's say, a race that's like 4 laps around the track. The first 3 laps, like, nobody's going to sprint. Like, you're all going to, like, just leisurely go at the same pace as everyone else, and then you pull away at the end. That's kind of what I feel like's going on with the East here. But either way, I think Monty Williams has the Phoenix Suns playing at a much higher level, and yeah, I think he deserves Coach of the Year, and I don't think people would be too upset if he actually won. So
Okay, interesting. So I think I agree with you. I wouldn't be upset if Monty Williams wins, but I have Taylor Jenkins winning Coach of the Year. I just think part of so I like your points on Monty Williams. I do think that he deserves credit, which is why I have him in my top three, but I have him third in my top three.
mhm.
And the reason I do is because he had a roster that already went to the finals last year. And yes, you can make the argument he got robbed of it last year, but he pretty much came back with the same core pieces, player development, and they're in the same position, poised to number one team in the West, poised to make it to the finals again. And really and truly, that roster turned around when CP3 came there, Chris Paul came there, and his leadership has helped as well. And that's not to take away from Monty Williams, because I think he's done a great job, and setting that culture and setting that tone starts from management, then goes to coaching, then goes to the players. Like, if the coach doesn't hold the players accountable, CP3 can't do it all on his own. So I'm not taking away his credit. I just think expectations matter, and I think Phoenix was expected to be maybe not this far ahead of everyone else. I don't think anyone had them like running away with first place, best record in the league type team.
I don't agree with that at all.
What do you mean?
Even if you remember some of those segments with the media after the Bucks beat the Suns,
Yeah,
there was always segments on like, what would you rather bet? The Suns make it back to the finals, or they're more of a first round exit team? And Nick Wright's one of the guys that said it's like, I believe they're more of a first round exit team. I actually think it's impressive what he's done to keep the team motivated, keep them hungry, and now they're looking like a repeat favorite in the West. Like, he's kept that team, from really falling off track, because usually, like, you go to the finals, you get demoralized, and then sometimes you don't necessarily go back there, because a lot of people thought Phoenix was a fluke team last year, right? Now, towards the end of the year, there's a lot of like people saying that they're their clear cut favorite to make it to the finals, and I think Monty Williams deserves a lot of credit for that.
that's a good point, and he does. I just think this goes back to some of the discussions we've had on Memphis and Ja and the team as a whole. Going back earlier to some of the earlier segments we've done, nobody predicted that Memphis would be second in the NBA at the end of the season, and they've locked up the second seed. And then if you told someone Memphis is missing John Morant for a quarter of the season, which is effectively what he's going to end up missing, about 25% of the season, and that in those games that he misses, Memphis is going to win somewhere from 85 to 90% of those games, you would literally laugh at how ridiculous of a take that is, but that's happened. That's actually what's happened, and it's hard. Like, I know Listen, I have no problem if Monty Williams wins this because there is a case, and you've made the case, and I think everything you bring up about Monty Williams is valid. So I have no issue if Monty Williams wins it. I just think Memphis has exceeded expectations by such a big margin that it's going to be hard not to give it to Taylor Jenkins over anybody else, just because nobody thought Memphis could do what they're doing, and that's a group effort, and that's they've done it without their best player. So you can't just say it's all Jaw. It's not because 20 if they play 25% of their games without Jaw and they win 90% of those games, there's other pieces there. There's other things going on there. They played Phoenix the other night with I think four starters missing or three starters missing or something like that. They won. Phoenix was healthy. Now you might
Yeah,
say
but
it's an end of season game. It doesn't like maybe both teams weren't playing
this
their
one
hardest.
actually doesn't affect any seeding this game.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. But I just think that game is a testament to the type of system Memphis is running, the way Taylor Jenkins has figured out a way to maximize his output from the players that he has. And he's got everybody playing their role, buying in. And I watched part of that game. I watched the highlights afterwards as well. I don't think Memphis has a bad player. Like Taylor Jenkins puts all his players in a position to succeed. He understands their strengths, understands their weaknesses, and I'm not saying other coaches don't. I think, like you said, I have no issue if Monty Williams wins this award. So I have him in my top three as well. But I just think again it goes back to Memphis having done so much more than what anybody expected. And you could argue that, like you said, you could argue Phoenix has done more than what people might have expected too. But this is let's not act like Phoenix is a team that wasn't in the finals last year. They were,
Well,
and
nobody gave them credit for it,
fine, that's fair.
and
That's
they're
fair.
going
That
to be a, they're going to get more than 65 wins this year.
yeah, most likely. I think they're at 62 or 60. They're
They're at
62 right
62
now.
right now. They've won over
62,
80% of
50.
their games.
Yeah, look again. I got no issue with it. I just for me, it's Taylor Jenkins, and it's not by any means a lock. It's not a landslide. It's very close. It's tough. I think Taylor Jenkins and Monty Williams are the top two, and I think they are close. For me, if I had a vote, it would be Taylor Jenkins, just because of what Memphis has done, the market they're in, their expectation. They really only have one superstar. The
So
rest are just pieces.
I don't think what market they're in actually matters.
I do because I think attracting talent
But
is
that's
harder to do in a shittier market.
the coach doesn't attract the talent though. He coaches what he has.
Right, and it's the coach's job to get the most out of what he has. And I'd argue that it's it's harder to do what Taylor Jenkins is doing with Memphis than it is to do what Monty Williams is doing with Phoenix. Phoenix got more talent up and down that roster. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, but let's just say Monty Williams is dealing with expectations. Memphis had zero.
Yes, fine. That's fair. Memphis is playing with house money. I get that because they had no expectations. And I think next year Memphis will have expectations given what they've accomplished this year. So uh, fine, Monty Williams, like, look, he deserves his credit. I think Taylor Jenkins has done more with less, which is a harder job to do. It's hard to get your team to win 90, 85 to 90% of your games when it's missing their only superstar player, their best player and their only superstar. So now it's a team effort, it's a system effort. They're relying on the sum of the parts being greater than the individual parts on the team, and that's due to the coach.
Okay.
So for me, it's close, but I have Taylor Jenkins first. And if Monty Williams won, I'll say that too. If someone has Monty Williams winning, if you have Monty Williams winning, I have no issue with it. I think that's a great choice as well. I just have Taylor Jenkins by a 51-49 type split. Like it's very close. I give it to Taylor Jenkins, but Monty Williams has a great case as well. And I also want to shout out Ime Udoka with what he's doing with Boston. Boston was in a terrible position. They were a below 500 team. We talked about them last week on the pod, or maybe 2 weeks ago, whenever we did it. They really turned it around. They had turmoil amongst their players, like Marcus Smart calling out some of the leaders on the team, and he really figured out a way to turn that thing around. And they got the best defense in the league. They've given them so they're in position to be end off the season in first place, which is no small feat in the East. This especially this year. And I think some of that credit has to be given to him. Some of that slow start might have been, it could be attributed to having a new coach and a new system in place and getting your players to buy in, but he did something. Something changed along the way over there. He got the guys to buy in. He was able to connect with his star players, bring the team together, and they've really turned it around. So he definitely deserves some credit as a top three candidate. And then shout out to Mike Malone and Nick Nurse. They rounded out. They were close to making my top three, but they weren't quite there. I think Mike Malone's done a fantastic job missing two of his top three players and still getting guys to play and still putting Denver in a position. I think Denver's like sixth in the East right now, which is pretty impressive considering they're
West,
missing.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, in the West. Yep, they're missing like 40 to 50% of their cap. That's being eaten up. So that's a hell of a job done there too. And Nick Nurse has the Raptors just completely blowing expectations out of the water. Like I think the over ESPN had the over under on the Raptors for 36.5 wins. They're already at 45 with 5 games to go or 4 games or whatever it is. So
Yep.
they rounded out. They were close to making the top three, but it's Taylor Jenkins for me by a very small margin. Monty Williams second, Ime Udoka third, and then you have Mike Malone and
Yeah,
Nick.
that's fine. I'm fine. I'm happy with that. And yeah, I think it just becomes I guess, splitting hairs between who we think's actually going to win.
Yeah, I think it's at that point. Like both guys have cases. I don't think you can go wrong either way. Taylor Jenkins is just my pick. That's my personal preference. I mean, I would have absolutely no problem giving it to Monty Williams. He's earned it. We'll put it that
Yep.
way. Okay, now let's talk about Defensive Player of the Year.
Exciting.
This one was hard, man. There's a lot of good candidates, like guys who I thought. So let me just put it this way: I had a short list of 7 guys that were like
Okay.
made my
Yeah,
finalists. Like I had a lot
I
of
had
guys
to.
who
Yeah, you have to narrow it down. It's
it
hard.
was hard to narrow it down to my top three. So why don't you give me your top three and then I'll give you mine.
All right, in my top three, I have Giannis, Jared Jackson Jr., and Marcus Smart.
Oh, I have a very different top three than you. Okay, I have Giannis in my top three. I have
Okay.
Bam Adebayo and Rudy Gobert.
Okay. Yeah,
Those are
I
my.
was flip flopping between Rudy and Jaren Jackson only because they're really similar.
Yeah.
Um, but you'll be surprised. I actually think Marcus Smart has a case for Defensive Player of the Year this year.
So do I. So if I had to give you like, I gave you my top three. If I had to give you my next 2 slots, it would be Marcus Smart and Jaren Jackson Jr. So they would round out my top five. They just barely missed the cut for top three.
Okay.
So
Like
who do you have winning? Let's put it that
I
way.
actually have Marcus Smart winning this year.
Oh, okay. I have Giannis winning it this year.
Yeah, and I know it's hard, I guess, for a point guard to actually win, and
Then that's what I'm going to argue with you. That
yeah, but
it's
like the defensive presence and like Boston's team defense as a whole really is anchored through, I guess, Marcus Smart's energy, his leadership, stuff like that. Gets steals at an elite level, and I guess we could say pound for pound, he's probably one of the best defensive players in the league. But like, yeah, you're pretty much splitting hairs again here. Like Jaren Jackson Jr., I have he's the NBA's, I believe, block leader in total blocks, and I think he's either first or second in blocks per game. But obviously, Memphis is also a very good defensive team now, and he's like a large portion for it. And then Giannis obviously is Giannis. He's a great two-way player on both ends of the court. And realistically, if he wasn't scoring like 30 points a game and focused more on defense, he'd probably be running away with Defensive Player of the Year by a landslide. But I think Marcus Smart has the case, especially with how Boston's turned around their season. They're playing at an elite defensive level this last half from the New Year's and on. And yeah, it's just tough to score on them, and Marcus Smart's pretty much the center of all that. So I think I have to give him some credit, and I think there might be some like voter fatigue as well. Like you don't like to see the same like Rudy Gobert is always up there. Giannis has won a Defensive Player of the Year, stuff like that. Like I think Marcus Smart might actually win it this year. I think there's a decent case for him.
okay. So I like Marcus Smart, and I think you make a good point about him being like the point of attack for Boston's defense. And we just talked about Boston having the best defense in the league, especially since the new year, where they've like run away with it. It's not even close since the new year. But here's my issue with why I don't think Marcus Smart didn't make my top five,
Okay.
if or my top three. Sorry. So my top three are Giannis, Bam, and Rudy. And the common theme amongst the guys who were in my top five and my top three, they're all big men except Marcus Smart. And the
Yep.
reason is these guys, these big men, with the exception of Gobert. So I had Gobert third. I
Okay.
had Bam second, and I had Giannis first.
Sure.
And the only reason I can't put Marcus Smart higher than these guys is because Giannis or Bam, and I'll get to why I have Gobert third, but
So
Giannis and Bam can
just
guard
with
Marcus
Bam.
Smart, but Marcus Smart can't guard either of them, and that's where it becomes hard for a guard to win an award where Marcus Smart is great at guarding other guards. He can even guard other wings, but he can't guard a Giannis. Giannis can guard anyone, any player at any position. You put Giannis on him, you give yourself a good chance to get a stop. You watch that game. Giannis had the game-saving block. Okay, I'll make my
Well,
case for
like
Giannis after.
Marcus Smart's not a good offensive player. Like
Yes, he focuses on defense, right?
but like he's easy to guard then.
That okay. I'll phrase it differently. So I'm not just against each other.
I
So
get what you're trying to say.
it's the
Like
versatility for
they
me.
have the skill set, the size, and I guess the
Correct.
genetics to deal with any potential offensive player.
Yeah, it's the skill set for it's the versatility for me.
But
It's it
you're breaking it down to one on one. Let's say if we include 5 on 5 help defense, like Marcus Smart does get like a lot of steals on help defense, clogging the passing lanes. Like still defense. It's just not necessarily one-on-one defense that you're referring to.
yes. Okay, so let me make my case. Let me give you the reasons for
Sure.
my top three, and then we'll get into the whole guard versus big man or bigger player um, for why I don't think a guard can win
Yeah,
this
that's
award.
fine.
Okay, so I had Rudy Gobert third because he's a monster in the paint. There's no question about it. He changes a lot of shots, blocks a lot of shots. And Rudy Gobert has a 36.3% defensive rebounding rate. So you need defensive rebounds to close off defensive possessions, and I think there's nobody on this list who has a better rebounding rate than Rudy Gobert. He's great at closing up defensive possessions, securing the ball, and letting Utah get into its offense. Now the problem is with Rudy Gobert and why I don't think he can be Defensive Player of the Year is he gets picked on and attacked by small guards because he's got slow feet, and they a lot of teams
That's
in the
why he shouldn't.
playoffs, and this is
Yeah.
why I couldn't rank him any higher than third
Okay.
in the playoffs. You can't be a Defensive Player of the Year if you are a primary target for somebody they want to attack. For me, if someone's a Defensive Player of the Year, teams should be afraid to go at this guy. Teams should be like, "Okay, we want he's the guy we don't want to attack. He's the guy we want to pull away from the basket, keep him off in a corner so he doesn't affect the flow of our offense." That's the opposite of what happens with Gobert. Teams have historically planned to get him switched onto a Steph Curry or a Damian Lillard or CJ McCollum or any type of guard who can
Yep.
create their own offense, or even a wing that can create their own offense that's quick, and isolate him, put him on an island and attack him. And for that reason, he cannot be any higher than third for me, regardless of what he does in the paint, regardless of how he guards other big men. I think the versatility factor, which for me is very important in my rankings, it's just not strong enough for his case.
Yeah, that's
Sim
fine.
point blank, he's third. Now Bam, I had Bam at second because Bam is actually very similar to Giannis, but just to a lesser extent. He's
So
just not as good.
just with Bam, would he even qualify for the award? He's only played 53 games right now. What's the minimum?
Oh, he's only played 53.
Yeah, he's
I didn't
been.
even know
That's
that.
why I didn't consider him. He's been away most of the year.
What is the? I don't know what the minimum is. We might have to look that up. But okay, so let's say he does qualify. I don't know if he will or not. Minimum. So let's say he does qualify, right?
Let's say he does.
Let's say he does. So he's basically just Giannis, but to a lesser extent. He's just not as good. So I get why if you don't have Bam in there because you don't think he'll qualify, or we don't know what the number is
Sorry,
for
not
him,
as good as a defender or player.
just not as good as a defender. He's just not as
Okay.
good as Giannis, and I have the stats to back that up. So defensive stats are defensive advanced stats. There's an inherent flaw with these stats, so we take them, but they're not everything. I do have to incorporate some sort of eye test because even though you have advanced stats that measure an individual player's defensive ability, it's also very much tied to the team's defensive ability, and that's where your defensive box plus minus comes in, and I think that is one of the most telling stats in the league for your ability as a defensive player. And defensive box plus minus is pretty much the defensive points per 100 per 100 possessions that a player contributes above a league average player translated to an average team. So it tries to take out your team. And so if you're a really good defensive team and that's bumping up your defensive numbers, it takes that variable out of the equation. It takes your defensive metrics and output and applies it to an average team. So now team success won't matter as much. It's more of an individual stat, right? So Bam has a very good defensive plus minus. He has the second highest on this list at 2.2. He's not as good of a rebounder, and he has good defensive win shares, which is the number of wins contributed to a team based on your defense. He's like all these guys on the list, they're very close in defensive win shares. So I don't know how much of a telling stat that is, but I just Bam has the versatility. He checks that off. He can guard 1 through 5. He's quick on his feet. He's the engine behind Miami's defense, which is a very good defense.
Hmm.
He's sort of that back line. He's talking. He's calling everyone out. He's their anchor. He's a good rebounder, 26.3% rebounding rate. That's not as good as Gobert, but Gobert's insane. He's on his own level when it comes to rebounding. I just think the fact that he anchors one of the best defenses in the league in Miami, similar to what your argument was for Marcus Smart. The difference again boiling down to versatility for me. Bam can guard point guards. Bam can guard centers. Marcus Smart cannot guard centers, and that's the only reason why for me a guard just cannot win this award. It's just too
Okay.
hard you can be unless you're Marcus Smart and you put on 40 pounds and you can guard big
No, no,
men.
no.
Like
I
it's
can
just
see
too
that.
hard, right? And then my first place is Giannis. Giannis has far and away the best defensive box plus minus on this list, and it is not close. Like Bam was second place with 2.2. Rudy Gobert has 1.7. Marcus Smart has 1.7. Very similar to Rudy Gobert. I actually don't have an issue with having Marcus Smart on this list because he is great defensively, no question about it, except for the versatility thing. But otherwise, in every other aspect, he's great defensively. So Giannis's defensive box plus minus is 3.6. He's double everybody on this list except Bam, where he's like 50% higher than Bam. So
Yeah,
Giannis's
it's not
defensive
even close.
impact, it's not even close. And his defensive rebounding percentage is 30%. He's getting up there to that Rudy Gobert territory. Him and Rudy are the only people above 30%. So he's gobbling up rebounds. He can switch onto anybody. The versatility is there. I watched him block Embiid. This is all just in the past week. He blocked Embiid for a game-winning block. They played Brooklyn. That last possession in regular time, I think it was, where the Nets, Giannis hit the game-tying three
Yep.
tie the game before it went to overtime. Brooklyn called a timeout. They ran a play where they cleared out the floor for Kevin Durant. He isolated against a shorter. I can't remember who was on him. It was a shorter defender that was on Kevin Durant. Giannis came at the perfect time to help off of his man. He left his man to come help. Timed it absolutely perfectly when Kevin Durant had his back turned to the basket. KD didn't even know he was there. He contested the shot, and I'm pretty sure it was the reason why KD missed because the guy that was guarding KD was like 8 inches shorter than him. He had no chance at affecting KD's shot, but Giannis came over, helped. Like the defensive awareness, the ability to rebound, the versatility from guarding Kyrie to guarding Kevin Durant. That's a 6'2" guy. That's a 7 foot guy. The ability to guard anybody on any court anywhere in the world, and it's not just that, it's his willingness to do it for me. He goes at these guys. He takes the challenge personal. He shows up and he defends. These guys do not have good games against him. He impacts these players and that's shown by his defensive box plus minus. So for me, he checks off every box. He rebounds. The versatility is there guarding 1 through 5. He anchors a good defense. He has a defensive awareness and his metrics show what his impact is to defense on one of the best defensive teams in the league, a team that's near the top of the rankings in the league. I think Giannis has to be the defensive player of the year. It's going to be a shame if it's just voter fatigue as the reason why he doesn't win it, but Giannis is just a monster and he's basically gotten the best out of all the best players in the league because he's the best two-way. Like he wants to challenge on defense, and he's going to take it to you on offense. So for me, his defensive metrics, everything he checks off every box. The metrics, the versatility. We went through it all. It's Giannis for me, and I don't particularly think it's that close. It should be Giannis.
Yeah, no, I you make a really compelling case, and I agree with everything that you're saying too. He's pretty much like Kawhi on steroids, where we said like who's the best two-way player in the league. He's taken offense to a new level and the defense.
Agreed.
But
100%.
yeah,
100%.
like if he's never won a Defensive Player of the Year award before, he'd be a shoe-in for this. But this is what I mean. Like the Bucks just they're an unflattering 48-29. I think people expect more from them, and everyone always says like, "Yo, yeah, the Bucks don't look the same. They're not really in the high gear, so no one's really paying any real attention to them." But yeah, the stats say he should be Defensive Player of the Year, and the only reason I think Marcus Smart probably has a decent chance is because of, I guess, optics and what Boston's been able to do lately, turn around this season. If they somehow finish like the one seed, it'll definitely be as a result of their defense because everyone knows their defense is, elite now. Um, and even like some people believe Jason Tatum's in the MVP discussion, but like, yeah, I feel like a lot of what Milwaukee's done this year has just been pretty much phased out. Like no one's talking about them at all.
And I think that goes back to what you said about like Phoenix and how people kind of wrote them off. I think last year people think, oh, Milwaukee won because Kevin Durant's toe was on the line and they were this close to losing. And like we've just gotten kind of numb to what Giannis is doing because he's done it for what 4 years, 3, 4 years now, where he's just
Oh, it's
absolutely dominating the league, like
it's the Kevin
in
Durant
ways.
lovers.
Yeah, it's he's like Giannis is dominating the league right now in ways we haven't seen, and we'll get into that later too in
Yeah,
the second half in the second part of this
he
show.
he's
For the
yeah, he's the best player in the league, but he's not the most aesthetically pleasing to watch, and
Yes,
that's why people. And you know what? To me, I think I like aesthetically pleasing. To me, is watching people bulldoze over people. Like, that's more fun than watching
yeah, and you know
skill.
what? That's personal preference. So
Yeah,
whether or not that's more aesthetically pleasing or not, again, that varies from. For me, I care more about the results and the output.
but
It
like
doesn't matter how you get the job done. It
yeah,
matters that you get the job done. And Giannis is doing it better than anyone else. And on defense, there is no argument for Giannis not to win it. I can't see the argument. And I'll give you this: if there was a guard that was going to win it, I would vote Marcus Smart.
yeah.
So, but I just this goes back to my whole thing: versatility with the way the NBA is played today, how we're like, moving towards positionless basketball, and you've
But
got to be able to
I
guard
just
one
want
through
to
five and switch everything.
yeah, I
Yeah,
just
go
want to
ahead.
bring up one thing. I think it was Chris Broussard who brought this up on First Things First, and it was over the MVP segment.
Okay.
And he mentioned like the grades of the NBA, they're judged by, these type of awards, these accolades. So in the back of your mind, like if you're not going to vote Steve Nash a third straight MVP, which he admitted to, he's like, do I really think he's as great as this guy, as great as this guy, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. So like people will hold back from Giannis. Like they don't want to give him 3 or 4 MVPs too fast because then he'll be on the Jordan level. Same thing. They won't want to be like, oh, is he really worth another Defensive Player of the Year? Because it's just funny, like the kind of balancing they're doing to keep him not on that great trajectory, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know. I
Like
watched that
Jordan's the
segment.
bar, and they're not letting anybody, you know, get there because Giannis, he probably has maybe a couple MVP years left. You never know, like with injury and stuff like that. But they're just keeping it as, oh, they're keeping quiet about his defensive skills, keeping quiet about his MVP case. So I think there's a lot of not just voter fatigue, but voter resistance to give you multiple awards borderline every year.
I agree with that, and I watched the segment. I know what you're referring to. And the he called it the historical precedence.
Yeah,
That's what he called it on his checklist. And listen, I think that's complete BS.
it's bias.
It's 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 the most subjective.
But that's why I'm saying he might not win Defensive Player of the Year, even if it is that clear cut.
I agree. I agree that there's no guarantee he wins it. I think he should, and I think there's no case for him not to. But you're right that there's going to be media concern about giving him too many awards too quickly to make him. When we look back historically, it'll seem he's greater than he actually was. The thing is, Giannis is going to be a top 10 NBA player all time, and he could be top 5 all time if he wins more. And like he's got the talent and the sort of dominance that goes with being that level of player. And we're getting sidetracked here, but I think the whole historical precedence thing is BS. Like you have to take the metrics at face value. It's not you can't blame Giannis for being so far ahead of everyone else because the field is not as good. Like that's not Giannis's fault. He's just better than everyone else. So the historical precedence thing and saying, oh well, we can't give him three because Was he really as good as that one? Well, this year, yeah, he is really as good as he's that much better than everybody else in the field, and you're basing this award on an annual basis. So it does not really matter what anyone else did in any of the year because this award is an annual award given on your performance for this particular season that we're talking about right now, the 2021-2022 season. And in this season, for me, it's Giannis, and it's not close. So I think the whole historical precedence thing is BS, but I 100% agree with you that it is a real thing, and you're
Yeah,
right that it could be used against Giannis for well, like when it comes down to actual voting. So there is a chance he doesn't get it, even though he deserves it,
that's
because
just
of
the point I want to make. He's at a disadvantage because Defensive
yeah,
Player of the Year, that's a big
he is.
award for best defender in the NBA. But people in the back of their mind, for him specifically, are going to be like, okay, he's racking up a lot of these awards too fast.
Yes, I agree, and that is a very real risk, and I think it will be used against him, if not here, and when we get into it in part two of this show next week, when we do the other awards, this will again come up when we're talking about MVP and where Giannis ranks amongst that MVP
Yep.
for both of us, and sort of the historical precedence thing. It will come up again because, like you said, it's going to be used against him somewhere for sure. So. But anyways, for me, for this week, for this segment, this was a lot of fun. The first three awards. We hope everybody enjoys, and they people have to stay tuned because there's going to be a part two to this where we discuss the rookie of the year, the most improved player, and the MVP. We'll come out with that next week. But it was a good segment. I think six man of the year was easy. Coach of the year, there was good discussion, and we both agree it could be either Taylor Jenkins or Monty Williams. Neither of us have a problem with either. And defensive player of the year, another fun one. I think Marcus Smart is a great guard, great defensive guard, and if it was going to a guard, it would go to him for me. But I just think Giannis is over. Like he's just demolishing people defensively. So for me, it's Giannis.